The chicken fight is one of Family Guy's longest running gags, and during their many explosive beat-em-ups, they've destroyed trains, planes, boats, and hell, even spaceships. But what fueled this feud? How many billions of dollars of property damage have they caused? And does this chicken have a life outside of Peter? We'll be answering all of these important questions in the complete timeline of Ernie the Chicken. His origins and high school. One of the biggest WTF questions in Family Guy is, why the hell is there a giant mother-clucking chicken walking around the town of Quahog? Where did Ernie come from? Well, this question was finally answered when Dr. Hartman casually mentions that he tried to clone a chicken.
The result wound up being a man-sized chicken that was incredibly hostile and ended up escaping from the lab.
Now, let's take it back to the 80s, back when Ronald Reagan was president.
The actor? He's president?
Peter, you're the one from the future. You should know. Forget it.
In the episode Meet the Quagmires, Peter goes back in time in order to correct the timeline he messed up. This includes knocking out Quagmire and kissing Lois at the big dance. With the timeline now realigned, Peter is ready to partay, and while Brian performs an absolute cracking number of Never Give You Up, Peter gets a little too excited and accidentally punches a large chicken called Ernie. But his friends tell him to just drop it because they'll absolutely never see that guy again. And although you could argue that this interaction may never have happened if Peter never time traveled, I strongly believe that Peter had always punched Ernie at the dance, and thus a long, furious feud ignited. The long revenge. So, let me ask you, have you ever heard the saying that revenge is a dish best served cold? Well, Ernie waited until the dish was bloody freezing, waiting 2 whole decades to get payback on Peter for punching him. So, what was the plan that took him 20 years? Well, he gave Peter an expired coupon, making him look like an absolute fool when he tried to redeem it. Fueled and fired by embarrassment, Peter dived through glass and the two duked it out, and they fought tooth and nail, scraping across town until they fell out of a multi-story window and Peter landed hard on Ernie. But just when you thought it was all over, the chicken's eye snapped open, showing us that this big chicken will be back again to rule the roost. Yes, Peter never knows when Ernie will attack next, and although we thankfully don't have a giant vengeful chicken after us, we do have threats trying to attack us every single day online. But thankfully NordVPN is there to shield us from sneaky malware and thieves. NordVPN can connect to thousands of servers worldwide, allowing you to unlock TV shows and movies not available in your country. So if you want to watch Rick and Morty but it's not available on your Netflix, just connect to the UK server and up comes Rick and Morty. And for anyone living in the US, you do not have access to Star on Disney+, meaning that you're missing out on hundreds of episodes of Family Guy, American Dad, and Bob's Burgers. But with NordVPN, just connect to a server in the UK and voila, you've got access to tons of new animated content. And the great thing is that you can use it on up to 6 devices. So go to nordvpn.com/timelines or simply click the link in the description for an exclusive deal. Plus you get 1 month absolutely free. It's also completely risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Round 2. Ding ding! Just when Peter thought he was safe, Ernie flapped down on him from out of nowhere. They traded blows and continued fighting, even atop a train and railway tracks, before falling from a cliff and smashing through a glass ceiling on a cruise ship. But that didn't stop them, causing the ship to then plough through the city, and it was slowly starting to become clear that no amount of property damage or human fatalities could get in between a man and his feathered foe. And the fight only got dirtier when, in a reference to Indiana Jones, they end up fighting underneath the plane where the propeller dices Ernie up into some nice tenders. I'm going to take a little break from all this violence and dive into a fan theory that I found a little interesting. Written by Reddit user Trevor J414, he writes that the chicken represents the feeling of depression, and they found it interesting that Peter will return to whatever scene he was before the chicken fight, and the other characters will continue the scene as if not noticing what Peter went through. Quoting the post, it says, "Depression will randomly creep up on people and an exhausting mental battle with themselves will ensue. Sometimes you think that the battle has been won, only to find out that the depression will always eventually find itself back to you." Depressed people will often mask their feelings to seem completely fine, even though they are in mental hell. As a result, the people around them will act like everything is normal because they can't tell that anything is wrong. And I have to say, I found this very interesting, especially seeing as Peter has admitted to being depressed in the past. But quite honestly, I don't really believe in this theory. I believe it's just a random funny gag to A, fill time, and B, continue with the zany humour that Family Guy is famous for. But I did think that it was an interesting theory to talk about, and one I definitely wanted to bring up. But what do you think? Ernie and Peter become friends. Fully recovered from being sliced apart, Ernie was back again. They fought in the sewers and they fought in the sky. Hell, they even fought atop of a goddamn Ferris wheel. After demolishing the city and being surrounded by rubble, Peter and Ernie stopped to realize that they couldn't even remember why they started fighting in the first place. So to make amends, Ernie invited Peter out for dinner, where he introduced him to his wife Nicole. But just when it looked like the two had finally made up, they started to fight over who could pay the bill. Their brawl led them into the kitchen, where Peter brutally bashed Ernie's head in with a frying pan. And although the dinner did end up in disaster, it seemed as a whole that Peter and the chicken became amicable. In the episode Big Man on Hippocampus, Peter lost his memory, and when he walked past the chicken, he said hi, but Peter just ignored him. Spurred by this, Ernie smacked Peter over the head, which eventually gave Peter his memory back. Their most epic battle. The next time they saw each other was when Peter accidentally backed into Ernie's car. This then led into their most epic battle yet. They fought on an ice cream van before accidentally falling into Stewie's time machine and transporting to the Wild West, which is where they landed on a wagon being chased by natives. Unknown to the chaos happening around them, they wound up on top of the DeLorean and time warped back to the present day. On a completely separate note, Seth MacFarlane would reference Back to the Future 3 again in his movie A Million Ways to Die in the West.
Right, Scott!
But anyway, back to Family Guy. Ernie and Peter continue trading blows all the way into a science research center where they inadvertently cloned 1,000 copies of themselves. They then killed each other until only 2 remained, and the resulting explosion blasted them into a rocket ship, which then shot them into space. They then crashed down into Earth, and Peter finally got the upper hand by coiling a chain round Ernie's neck. And in a twist that literally everyone saw coming, he opened his eye again. According to the DVD commentary for The Simpsons guy, Seth MacFarlane revealed that he intended to have this fight as their final fight, resulting in Ernie's demise. But he changed his mind last minute to keep the character, so he was present for the planned Family Guy movie. By the way, do you think we will ever get this movie? Calculating the damage. Over this video, I've run through the mass destruction of these 2 hoodlums, and it does make you wonder, what's the total price of their property damage, and how many casualties have they caused? Well, I discovered a fascinating Reddit post that calculates all of this for us. User Too Lazy to Repost has painstakingly added all of this up for us. So let's run through this quickly. The post goes into great detail, like in the third fight where they totaled the subway train and underground to well over $50 million, as well as the wrecking of 5 apartment buildings and destroying several miles of city streets, amounting up to $15 million in damages. But their fourth fight racks up the highest total yet. The research facility they blew up cost $100 million, and the International Space Station cost $150 billion, with the shuttle costing $450 million on top of that. Not to mention the 416 deaths caused too. Their reverse fight back in season 11, which saw the explosion of a coffee shop and a Boeing 747 crash, racked up hundreds of millions in damages and hundreds more deaths. By the end, Peter and Ernie end up costing the city of Quahog and the world an estimated $154 billion, as well as 13,235 deaths. Now, do keep in mind that this is just a rough approximation, as a lot of this is a whole lot of guesswork, and the truly awful thing about all of this is that the two don't even bat an eyelid. Well, I guess Ernie does, but that's only to get back and fight again. Ernie's family. As mentioned earlier, Ernie's only existence isn't just at the mercy of a violent brawl. He has a personal life too. We met his wife Nicole earlier, and we also later find out that he has a chick who is in Stewie's class.
I don't really want to be friends with him, but he knows a lot of chicks.
And he comes across as a very good dad, taking his kid to the Space Museum. His relationships don't just stop at family either. He has a friendship with Lois, despite his rocky relationship with her husband. In the episode Follow the Money, it's revealed that they regularly meet up as friends for a nice old cup of coffee. But when his wife caught them together, she got the wrong idea and she and Lois squared it off. But instead of having an epic fight like their husbands, they instead slapped each other around in the coffee shop. But perhaps Nicole wasn't so wrong in thinking that their relationship wasn't purely platonic, as by the end of the episode they are texting each other and Peter isn't too pleased.
I don't want you talking to him anymore.
When Lois texted Ernie goodnight, we see the blinking dots appear before disappearing again, showing that he may just have some feelings for her. But in my own theory, I like to speculate that Ernie is sneakily trying to steal Lois away from Peter as part of the ultimate form of revenge. But sadly for Ernie, Nicole hypocritically runs away with another cockerel, all whilst he is on his bloody deathbed. Which brings us to our next section. Ernie dies. The next time Peter would see his old nemesis was when he was volunteering as a nurse in the hospital, and whilst working he found a very ill Ernie suffering from bird flu and close to death. At first, Peter celebrated the fall of his opponent by popping champagne and toasting his victory, but Lois brings up that Peter needs Ernie in his life, like Sherlock Holmes needs a Moriarty. It seems that people like Peter need an enemy to get them up in the morning. A motivation. The next day, Ernie passed away, but Peter wasn't going to let him go so easily and literally punched him back to life. When Ernie asked why, Peter explained that he can't live without him and that their feud brings him some excitement into his dull life and that he just needs him.
I hate you too, Peter Griffin.
Although a selfish reason why he revived Ernie was so he wouldn't have to be solely financially responsible for the destruction they caused across Quahog. The feud continues. Again. In the episode P-Terminator, the Peter Terminator arrives into Quahog and explodes Ernie's head with a shotgun. But don't worry, with all of Ernie's clues of vengeance, his eye pops open again, and I know, it's slightly repetitive. Now, I thought it was pretty important to say what I think about the whole Peter and Ernie chicken fight. Personally, I'm not a big fan of them. I feel like they go on forever, and I usually skip past them when watching the episodes. It seems like they only bring Ernie on to pad out the runtime. It's like the writer's lazy way of extending an episode by an extra 5 or so minutes. And I think that's the biggest issue with Family Guy's running gags in general, from Conway Twitty to the scrape knee gag. They are obviously thrown in to run out the clock, and thankfully the writers haven't relied on these overly long gags as much in the recent seasons. Which is why I really liked the Fecal Matters episode. It was different and involved Peter's and Ernie's frenemy relationship rather than just repeating another fight scene. But come on, what do you think? Do you like the chicken fights or do you hate them? I'd like to see your thoughts and start a conversation in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.